Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking a close look at a pretty intense conversation.
Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, right? Episode 2308.
Exactly. And it went everywhere. So
Right.
many interconnected ideas.
Yeah, really broad about ourselves, communities, the bigger picture.
Our mission really is just to pull out the most interesting nuggets from it.
That's good. It was definitely dense. Lots to unpack.
Okay, so let's start with something that seems simple, maybe. Play.
Yeah. Play. It's not just for kids, they were saying.
Right. Crucial for building those first, one-on-one bonds. Dyadic relationships.
Friendships, basically.
Yeah, and the key thing, it has to be voluntary. You have to want to do it.
That voluntary part, it says a lot, doesn't it? About freedom, about relationships.
How so?
Well, that genuine connection, it seems, it's built on choice, not, being forced.
Makes sense. Think about your own life, right?
Yeah.
Are you making space for that? For fun?
And they mentioned the play circuit in mammals, too.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
It's like the brain wiring for it. But it's fragile, easily disrupted by fear, hunger, stuff like that.
So you need safety. A kind of walled garden, they called it, for play to actually happen.
Exactly. Which underscores how important feeling secure is for any kind of positive connection.
And because it's voluntary, chosen. They said play is basically the opposite of tyranny.
That's a powerful idea. Tyranny forces, play invites.
Yeah. And they even suggested trying to bring that fun element into adult relationships, marriage even.
It probably takes more conscious effort as adults, I guess.
But maybe worth it for keeping things, alive.
Did you catch the statistic they threw out about religious married couples?
Oh, yeah. Having the most sex. That was surprising.
Definitely surprising. What do you make of that?
Maybe the commitment? The stability? Creates more intimacy?
Could be. Or shared values creating a stronger bond overall. Hard to say for sure.
Anyway, from there, the conversation kind of shifted to how relationships change, especially with kids.
Right. Big shift. They pointed out deciding to have a baby. That's a whole different level of commitment than just getting married.
Totally. You're bringing a life into the world. It changes everything.
And it often triggers a big jump in empathy, they suggested.
That line about seeing adults as just babies who've been alive longer.
Yeah, that hits differently, doesn't it? It gives you a bit more compassion, maybe.
And the Dave Chappelle quote.
Oh, about capacity for love. Not just the amount of love, but the capacity.
So profound. Like having kids literally expands your heart.
And biologically, they argued, the family unit with kids, that's the bedrock, the foundation of community.
Right. And that intense love for your own child? Maybe it helps you love others more too? Generalizes.
It could. But that protective instinct, that's also tied to tribalism, isn't it? Protecting your own.
True. Deeply ingrained stuff.
Which actually connects to another point they made, kind of unexpectedly.
What's that?
The reaction people apparently had seeing Peterson and his wife, Tammy, just talking civilly during Q&A.
People were shocked by that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Apparently so. Which, what does that tell you about the norm?
Yeah, that's sobering. It suggests seeing functional, healthy couples is maybe really rare in public life.
They contrasted it with some pretty dysfunctional examples. Alec Baldwin, Phil Hartman's wife.
Right. Those stories highlight the fear, maybe, of being trapped.
Yeah.
In a really negative, maybe even tyrannical relationship.
Exactly, that fear. And that brings us to power dynamics, status, reputation.
Yeah, they talked about conflict and how just dunking on someone, even if you win.
It feels empty, right? Unsatisfying.
Totally. Instead, they push this idea of, what was it? Reputational treasure.
Reputational treasure, like building up this deep respect through integrity, consistent good conduct.
They linked it to the Gospels even. Storing treasure in heaven would be meaning reputation, not money.
An unassailable reputation. That's the real wealth, they argued.
But there's a catch, isn't there? With seeking status.
Oh, yeah. It can be gamed. And that rush you get when your status goes up, that serotonin hit, it can actually make you less sensitive to negative stuff, to ethical concerns, tunnel vision.
Okay. So what's the alternative?
Engaging in a genuine quest. A quest for understanding, driven by wanting to learn, not just climb the ladder.
And funnily enough, going on that kind of quest might actually earn you a good reputation anyway.
As a byproduct, yeah. Not the main goal.
They also touched on social media here. The anonymity, the distance.
How it can make those negative power plays worse. Maybe even empower psychopathic types.
Okay, that's a heavy topic. Psychopathic parasites.
Yeah. The idea that a certain percentage of people, Cluster B personalities, dark tetrad traits.
They latch onto movements, ideologies, left, right, religious, secular, doesn't matter.
Exactly. It's not about the beliefs for them. It's about narcissistic supply, status, power.
Wow. So the ideology is just a tool, a costume.
Pretty much. Clothed in your clothing and waving your flags was the phrase used. Makes them super hard to spot.
And the traits, Machiavellianism.
Right. Manipulation. Narcissism, wanting admiration they haven't earned. Psychopathy, predatory, parasitic. And sadism, enjoying causing pain.
Grim stuff. And the internet.
Enables it, right. Removes the normal social checks and balances.
They said they saw early signs of this everywhere. Not just one side.
Yeah, mentioned anti-Semitic circles, but also elements on the left. It's not confined to one political camp.
So given all that, how do you navigate, how do you avoid being manipulated in this helter-skelter world, as they put it?
It's tough. Trust in traditional media is low. Finding reliable experts is hard.
They told that story about Bill Murray and the John Belushi biography.
Yeah, the Woodward one. And the suggestion it subtly framed Nixon in a negative light. Possibly connected to intel ops, a bit conspiratorial maybe.
But it led into the COVID discussion. Shifting narratives, suppressing dissent.
And the role of fear, compulsion, as tools for top-down control.
That was a key theme, wasn't it? Fear and compulsion.
Definitely. And they drew a direct line from how COVID was handled to the climate change narrative.
How so?
Similar patterns, they argued. Suppressing data that doesn't fit the main story. Downplaying uncertainties.
Which brought them to the climate apocalypse narrative itself.
Right. Arguing it's being driven, or at least exploited, by people seeking power, using fear of doom to justify control.
The infinitely expanding existential threat.
Yeah, that phrase, it becomes an excuse for controlling everything, down to the smallest things. Showerheads, whatever.
Petty tyranny, they called it.
And the idea is, if the crisis is permanent and total, then the control needs to be too.
They mentioned someone sending a podcast transcript about climate to Peterson's college.
Yeah, as an example of trying to enforce the narrative. Shut down discussion.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? How do you push back?
Identifying and resisting those psychopathic pretenders is key, but it's hard.
Both sides, left and right, struggle with setting boundaries against these types, they said.
Yeah. So they proposed focusing on the center, not as a mushy compromise, but as a place of invitation. Shared positive goals.
Like coming back to the idea of play. Create a game people actually want to play together.
Exactly. Offer a positive vision. Like their example was abundant, cheap energy for the world's poor. Something to strive for and not just run from.
Instead of just fear, fear, fear.
But then they asked, why doesn't that positive message land as well, especially on the left? Maybe those fringe types hijack the conversation.
Interesting question. Then they shifted gears again to the Abrahamic story.
Yeah, but less as strict religion, more as a model, a template for growth.
The call to adventure. Leave your comfort zone.
Right, with the promise of being a blessing, of contributing something worthwhile.
So the journey itself, even the tough parts, the suffering,
Yeah.
it becomes meaningful, justified.
And through that journey, you develop conscience, wisdom. You learn to navigate the world better.
They even framed it as following that inner drive for growth aligns you with some kind of ordering principle, a definition of God almost.
Contrasting that with the power orientation, which relies on manipulation and fear.
Sacrifice came up too. Cain and Abel.
Foundational patterns, right? Abel brings his best, genuinely. Cain brings less and is resentful. Bitter.
And the argument was that sacrifice, giving something up for a higher good, is the real foundation of society. Not power, not just seeking pleasure.
Culminating in the New Testament idea of total self-sacrifice. Christ as the model.
So Christ represents that voluntary giving of oneself for the good of the whole, the key to a healthy psyche and a healthy community.
Yeah, that was the connection they made.
Then Moses, another pattern, leadership development.
Shepherd to leader. Following what compels him, the burning bush, transformation, confronting tyranny, leading people towards a promise.
And needing to integrate your civilized side with your strength to be truly effective. Continuous self-improvement.
That burning bush idea, what calls to you, what grabs your attention and won't let go, that's your path forward.
They mentioned that theory too. The acacia bush, DMT.
Yeah, the university theory about hallucinogens perhaps playing a role in some prophetic experiences. Interesting aside.
Then the scouts sent into Canaan, another story about perspective.
10 come back terrified. The challenges are too big. Giants. Fear narrative.
But 2, Caleb and Joshua, they see the potential. They have courage, hope.
Right. And the consequence. Succumbing to fear leads to wandering in the desert. Embracing hope and faith leads towards the goal.
And Joshua's name, same as Jesus in Hebrew.
Underscoring that theme again. Voluntary sacrifice, courage, that's the path to the promised land, whatever that represents for you.
Okay, shifting to something much more current. Peterson Academy.
Yeah, the alternative education platform. They seemed pretty bullish on it. Rapid growth.
Dropping the price even. They clearly think there's a big need for something different from standard online university courses.
Which are often just PowerPoints, right? Not very engaging.
So they're focusing on great professors, production value, trying to build a social element too.
Yeah, plans for in-person stuff. Even a cruise, apparently. Building a real community around it.
Peterson also talked a bit about his own journey, didn't he?
From relative academic obscurity to, well, global phenomenon, and all the scrutiny and misrepresentation that came with it.
Intense whiplash, I imagine. Exciting but painful at first.
But seems like he's found a more positive groove now and emphasizes encouraging people who are trying to, sort themselves out, improve their lives.
Despite realizing how demoralized many people actually are.
Yeah, that contrast seemed important, seeing the positive impact but also the scale of the underlying problem.
It circles back to responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And meaning.
Taking on responsibility voluntarily, not as a burden, but as an opportunity. For purpose.
Because a life without meaning? That's the truly hard path.
Right. That line, crisis burden is light. Why? Because voluntary responsibility is actually the best path available, however difficult.
Better than the alternative anyway.
And they talked about getting out of your own head. Too much self-consciousness is paralyzing.
Focus on a purpose beyond yourself. The spirit of your aim. Let that guide you.
Yeah. Interesting contrast then drawn between Peterson's path, slow, steady build, and someone like Andrew Tate.
More sudden. Controversial.
Yeah.
Appealing to a different kind of disaffection.
Maybe appealing to those who feel ineffective, powerless. The allure of the shadow figure.
But they brought in Jung here, right?
Yeah.
Integrating the shadow is necessary, but not the end point.
Exactly. You need the feminine aspect, empathy, compassion, kindness, alongside justice and strength.
The idea of going from wimp to monster, but needing to move beyond monster to something integrated.
They used fighters, like GSP, Georges St. Pierre as examples. Top guys often have that blend of toughness and positive traits.
Contrasting with just pure narcissism, which is ultimately hollow, even if it brings external success.
Yeah. Then the focus shifted slightly to women and empathy.
A potential vulnerability. Agreeable women being manipulated by psychopaths because of a primary nurturing instinct.
Like for a naive woman, every victim is a baby, was the idea. You need discriminating empathy, like a wise mother has.
Indiscriminate empathy could be problematic. They linked it back to Eve.
Yeah, Eve's choice, then Adam going along and blaming her, a pattern of naivety encountering malevolence, leading to trauma.
So the need to teach kids, maybe especially girls, how to spot the serpents, the manipulators.
Seems to be the implication. Develop that discerning capacity.
This connects to the parasite problem again, but within institutions. Universities as the example.
Storehouses of value, but maybe unguarded, vulnerable.
Examples of parasitic behavior. False victim claims, plagiarism, bad faith arguments.
And how the system sometimes protects these individuals, allows them to thrive.
They use Pinocchio and Jonah here, too.
Yeah, interpreted through that lens.
Yeah.
The need to revive the original spirit of a thing, not just feed off its carcass, basically.
Then they defined politically correct authoritarianism.
Hyper-compassionate language, combined with a willingness to use force, coercion, fear to push its doctrines.
And they mentioned some predictors. Low verbal intelligence, being female, feminine temperament, taking certain courses.
Yeah, those were correlations they discussed. Tentatively linking the dominance of wokeness in female-heavy fields to that compassion ethos, but maybe needing more discrimination.
Which again leads back to the perceived decline of universities. Admin bloat, parasites, woke mobs.
And the difficulty of fixing them from within. Hence the push for alternatives like Peterson Academy.
High-quality online learning, critical thinking, traditional values, with plans to go global.
Right. Then a brief detour into money and ethics.
Wealth as opportunity. A force multiplier, but only if your aim is good.
Otherwise, it's hollow. Material success without meaning isn't satisfying.
The real satisfaction comes from creating genuine value.
Then, back to the climate apocalypse scandal.
Parallels to other fear narratives. Manipulative language like climate denier.
The psychological take, tyrants using fear for power. And highlighting real-world impacts of some policies, like Germany switching from nuclear to coal.
and questioning the overall impact of Western cuts when other nations are industrializing rapidly.
Right. Then Canada became the case study. Mark Carney.
His rise, his ESG net zero focus, despite being Trudeau's former economic advisor, potential downsides for Canada's economy.
Political maneuvering, canceling press events.
Yeah.
The state of Canadian media like CBC, Quebec separatism.
And how Trump's comments might have actually helped Carney by rallying Canadian nationalism against the U.S. Unexpected consequences.
Yeah, complex dynamics up north.
So, wrapping up, how do you spot the tyrants?
They're tools. Fear and compulsion. They're dislikes. Comedians and cars, apparently. Things that represent freedom and individuality.
Maybe. But they ended with some hope, right?
Yeah.
Positive trends.
Yeah. Young people returning to conservative churches. The climate narrative may be weakening. Initiatives like ARC promoting a different story.
Energy execs potentially helping the global poor. U.S. capacity for abundance. More people trying to aim upward.
Basically calling for that spirit of Joshua and Caleb. Faith and courage to face challenges and build something better.
Wow, okay. That really covered a lot of ground.
It really did. You see how it all connects, though. Play, relationships, belief, power, responsibility.
Absolutely. It's all tangled together. And that theme of spotting and resisting tyranny inside and out, it keeps coming back.
So for you listening as the learner, maybe take a moment. Let these ideas settle. How do they connect with your world?
Yeah, hopefully it sparks some aha moments, maybe some surprises, without being too much all at once.
We'd encourage you to maybe revisit the bits that really grabbed you, look into them more, find other perspectives. These are big topics.
And maybe mull over this final thought. How can you, in your own sphere, cultivate that spirit of upward aim? How can we bring that courage and hope inspired by those old stories to navigate the challenges we face today and actually create a better future?